On May 6th, 2004, about 3 months after Maura Murray went missing in Woodsville, New Hampshire, a newspaper called the Caledonian Record got everyone's attention. They reported a break in the case. State Trooper John Scarinza told them a new witness had come forward. The man reported that on the night of the accident, about 4 or 5 miles from the scene, he might have seen Maura on the road. The man was said to be returning from a construction job when he spotted a young woman matching Maura's description hurrying east on Route 112 about an hour after the accident. The police said that based on the man's description and the time, there was a good chance this was Maura. Because of this witness's tip to the police, on May 8th, 15 officers and 6 dogs conducted a search on foot and by helicopter 5 miles east of the accident. Nothing was found. If the goal of this witness was to move investigators away from his land, he seemed to have succeeded at first. But this also seems to have turned him into a person of interest. Law enforcement verified his work records, but based on what time he left the job site, it seems he probably got home around 7:30, right about when Maura might have fled the accident scene. If you look on Google Maps, you can see the accident location at the hairpin turn. If Maura continued on foot in the same direction she'd been driving, the very first intersection she'd come to less than a mile away was Route 112 and Bradley Hill Road. That's where the contractor lived. It's one of the first residences she'd come to. In fact, that's also where the school bus driver, remember the last person to see Maura, that's also where he lived, right on the other side of the road. He was watching from his house at that point, waiting for the police lights. So if the contractor left the job site at 7, he would have gotten home right about as Maura was walking by, or a little before that. But since police were checking this months later, maybe he left later and stopped somewhere on the way. It would have been something that had to delay him about an hour in order for him to pass Maura where he said he did 4 or 5 miles away. Note that I am not mentioning this contractor's name. I mean, it's a shame for an innocent man to be smeared. I don't want to do that. But at the same time, one has to admit there's something worth looking at here. Let's say he really did pass by Maura on the road. This area is desolate, so he would have only gotten the barest glimpse. Would he really remember 3 months later what she was wearing? According to the Boston Globe, he said Maura had turned down a dirt road as he approached. That means he would have seen even less. If she turned down a dirt road, we have to assume she didn't want to be seen. So she's walking briskly on a completely desolate road. It's late at night. A vehicle only goes by once every few minutes at best. If she doesn't want to be seen, it's easy to stay out of the car's headlights. If she turned up a dirt road, he really wouldn't be able to see as he drove past. At most, he'd get a shadowy glimpse. Okay, suppose he didn't see her on the road. That leaves 2 possibilities. First is that he's just one of those witnesses that always comes out of the woodwork in these cases. Attention seekers. He seems to have got the description of Maura about right, but then the description had been plastered all around on flyers. The other possibility is that Maura did reach his house and ask for help. At the time, he lived in a trailer on the property. He was building his own home there, a project in the middle stages. The trenches were already dug, and he was waiting for spring to pour the foundation. But again, we shouldn't really jump to conclusions. If one happens to be in a car that breaks down on the road in the middle of nowhere and knocks on a door for help, what are the odds of it being a killer? Or that it's someone who has never killed before, but has murderous fantasies and with opportunity knocking just can't resist the urge. I've seen reports on chat groups that both the local and state police came to see this contractor as their main person of interest, but I can't confirm any of that and didn't see that in any news reports. He's apparently made strange comments over the years to locals of inappropriate jokes about Maura being with him at his house or even Maura having sex with him. I think it's unlikely that the contractor's statements about seeing Maura on the road are truthful. I don't think he would have gotten a good enough look at her to see what she was wearing, and whatever he might have seen, he wouldn't remember 3 months later. And I think it's suspicious that he came forward after all that time, which means he either is in some way responsible for Maura's death, or he's just a gadfly who couldn't resist the limelight of the case. I suspect the latter. People like this come out in every high-profile case. This is why police always withhold crime scene evidence from the public. In fact, you can even see how something like this starts out and then evolves. At first, the contractor was probably just telling tall tales to locals. One can even kind of picture him at the local diner or something, telling people he saw something on the road and it might have been her. Over time, the tale picks up details. She was wearing a hoodie. She turned up a dirt road. Eventually, some local told a friend who told a friend who told someone in law enforcement. Now, when the cops knocked at his door, he's backed into a corner and makes his tall tale official. It's criminal if that's what happened. It drew valuable police resources 5 miles away, but it's impossible to prove the man made it up. If Maura had gone to this guy's house, I believe the police dogs would have tracked the scent. So let's move on to the next thing on our playlist. In the next episode, we'll see nearby is a home with an A-frame structure. So stay with us for the next episode on our playlist. Nearby is a home with an A-frame structure. A few years after Maura went missing, the owner of this house died, and then his brother came forward with a wild tale. He said that his brother, who had just died, had confessed in the past to killing Maura, and this brother now presented what he claimed was a bloody knife to Maura's father. The results of that part of the investigation are inconclusive, but intriguing. The house was searched with cadaver dogs, and the dogs had a very strong response, particularly inside a closet. I want to conclude by reminding us that Maura's family encourages people to keep her case fresh in the public mind by talking about it. Maura was a good kid with a bright future in front of her, and her family deserves resolution. Finally, we finish with a plug. Starting this week, Friday becomes Creepy Friday. We'll blend a bit of facts and fiction and give you stories that will cause a shudder to crawl across your flesh. Or if nothing else, at least we'll have an excuse to add some spooky background music to the video. Now, if you'd like a genie to appear and grant you 3.5 wishes, please click subscribe.